The Obedience of Abraham, a theological essay on faith, covenant and radical trust in God. Among all biblical figures, Abraham stands uniquely as the paradigmatic model of obedience and faith. Both the Old and New Testaments present him not merely as a historical ancestor of Israel, but as a theological archetype, a man whose life reveals the nature of faith as obedient trust in the living God. His obedience is not superficial compliance, but a deep, covenantal response to divine revelation, often enacted amid uncertainty, risk, and apparent contradiction. The obedience of Abraham is foundational to biblical theology. His story informs doctrines of faith, justification, covenant, promise, election, sacrifice, and divine testing. Abraham's obedience is not flawless nor mechanical. It unfolds through struggle, failure, growth, and transformation. Yet, Scripture consistently interprets his life as exemplary because he trusted God beyond visible evidence, obeying even when God's commands appeared unreasonable by human standards. This essay explores Abraham's obedience from a theological perspective, examining its historical context, narrative development, covenantal significance, ethical implications, and New Testament interpretation. Ultimately, Abraham's obedience teaches that true faith is inseparable from obedience, and that obedience itself is an expression of relational trust rather than legalistic performance. Historical and cultural context of Abraham's obedience. Abraham in the world of the ancient Near East. Abraham lived in a world shaped by polytheism, tribal loyalty, and territorial deities. In Mesopotamian culture, gods were localized, land-bound, and manipulated through ritual. Obedience to a god typically meant fulfilling cultic duties to ensure prosperity. Against this background, God's call to Abraham is revolutionary. The God who speaks to Abraham is not bound to place, shrine, or image. He demands not ritual, appeasement, but relational trust. Abraham is called to leave land, kinship, and inheritance, the very pillars of ancient identity and security. Obedience, therefore, is not merely moral compliance. It is existential rupture. Abraham's obedience involves abandoning everything that culturally defines safety and meaning. Obedience without law. It is crucial to note that Abraham lived before the Mosaic law. There is no Torah, no written commandments, no codified religious system. His obedience emerges directly from divine encounter rather than legal obligation. This pre-law obedience highlights a central theological truth. Obedience precedes law and arises from relationship, not regulation. Abraham obeys because he trusts the one who speaks. The call of Abraham, obedience as departure, Genesis 12:1-4. The radical nature of the call. Genesis 12 opens with a command that dismantles Abraham's entire worldview. Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. This command includes three escalating separations: country, geographical security; people, social belonging; father's household, economic and ancestral identity. God offers promise without detail. Abraham is not given a map, timeline, or explanation. Obedience here is movement without certainty, immediate obedience. The text states simply, "So Abram went as the Lord had told him." This brevity is theologically profound. Scripture emphasizes not Abraham's internal deliberations, but his decisive obedience. Faith is expressed in action. Theologically, this demonstrates that obedience does not require full understanding. Abraham obeys not because he comprehends the plan, but because he trusts the planner. Obedience and promise, the covenant relationship. Obedience within promise, not earned by it. God's promises to make Abraham a great nation, to bless him, and to bless the nations through him are unilateral gifts. Abraham's obedience does not earn the promise. It responds to it. This establishes a crucial theological distinction. Obedience is covenantal response, not contractual payment. Obedience sustained through delay, a major test of Abraham's. Obedience is time. The promised son does not come quickly. Years pass. Abraham ages. Sarah's barrenness intensifies. the tension between promise and reality. Obedience here is not dramatic heroism, but long-term faithfulness amid silence. Abraham continues to worship, build altars, and call upon the Lord even when fulfillment is delayed. The complexity of obedience, failure, and growth. Obedience is not perfection. Abraham's story includes moments of fear-driven disobedience lying about. Sarah in Egypt taking Hagar at Sarah's urging. These episodes reveal that obedience is not linear. Theologically, this shows that God's covenant faithfulness is not nullified by human weakness. Abraham's obedience matures through failure, growth in trust. Over time, Abraham demonstrates increasing confidence in God. By Genesis 18, he boldly intercedes for Sodom. By Genesis 22, he entrusts even Isaac to God. Obedience is portrayed as progressive formation, not instant sanctification. The binding of Isaac, obedience at the limit, Genesis 22. Divine testing and theological tension. Genesis 22 presents the most disturbing and profound test of obedience in Scripture. God commands Abraham to sacrifice Isaac, the child of promise. This command creates an apparent contradiction. God promised descendants through Isaac. God commands Isaac's death. Theologically, this moment confronts the limits of rational faith. Obedience without explanation. God gives no rationale. Abraham asks no recorded questions. He rises early and obeys. This obedience is not blind fanaticism. Hebrews 11 reveals that Abraham believed God could raise Isaac from the dead. Obedience is grounded in confidence in God's character, not in comprehension of God's methods, substitution, and revelation. God ultimately provides a ram, revealing that he does not desire human sacrifice. Abraham's obedience leads to deeper revelation of God as provider. Theologically, this event prefigures substitutionary atonement and reinforces that obedience ultimately leads to life, not destruction. Theological meaning of Abraham's obedience. Obedience as faith in action. James 2 asserts that Abraham's faith was made complete by his actions. Faith without obedience is abstract. Obedience makes faith visible. Obedience and justification. Paul emphasizes that Abraham was justified by faith, not works. Yet this faith is never passive. Obedience is the fruit, not the cause, of justification. Obedience and covenant identity. Abraham's obedience establishes him as the father of the faithful. His life defines covenant membership, not by ethnicity, but by faith-filled obedience. Abraham's obedience in New Testament theology, Romans and Galatians. Paul uses Abraham to argue that righteousness comes through faith. Obedience demonstrates that faith is genuine. Hebrews 11, Hebrews presents Abraham as a pilgrim who obeyed by faith, seeking a heavenly city. Obedience is framed as eschatological hope, living now in light of God's future. Christological fulfillment. Jesus fulfills Abraham's obedience perfectly. Where Abraham obeyed in shadow, Christ obeyed fully even unto death. Abraham's obedience points forward to Christ's redemptive obedience. Ethical and spiritual implications. Obedience is trust, not transaction. Modern believers often reduce obedience to rule-keeping. Abraham teaches that obedience flows from relationship and trust. Costly obedience. True obedience involves lost security, control, reputation. Abraham shows that obedience may require surrender of what we love most. Obedience in uncertainty. Abraham obeyed without clarity. Faith today likewise involves obedience amid unanswered questions. The obedience of Abraham stands at the heart of biblical theology. His life reveals that obedience is not mere compliance but relational trust enacted in costly faith. Abraham obeyed, not because he understood everything, but because he knew the one who called him. His obedience shaped covenant history, anticipated the gospel, and defined what it means to live by faith. In Abraham, Scripture teaches that obedience is the pathway through which faith matures, promise unfolds, and God's redemptive purposes advance. Ultimately, Abraham's obedience invites every generation to trust God beyond certainty, obey him beyond comfort, and believe him beyond reason, confident that the God who calls is faithful to fulfill his promises. The obedience of Abraham reveals the essence of biblical faith, trusting God beyond certainty, obeying beyond comfort, and believing beyond visible evidence. His life teaches that obedience is not legalistic performance, but relational trust expressed through action. Abraham's obedience shaped covenant history, anticipated the gospel, and continues to define what it means to live by faith. His story invites believers in every generation to follow God into the unknown, confident that the God who calls is faithful to fulfill his promises.